back to when you were on the farm, I guess. The first question was, when thinking back to your childhood, what do you remember about how life was as a little boy growing up on the farm? And how did that change over time?
Oh, I felt very protected. Three older brothers to look up to. Spent a lot of time with my mom in the kitchen. That's where I learned to cook, really, because I was the youngest by at least 8 years. So I was left inside while the boys went out to work. Mom was always chatting with me, and I'd watch her cooking and whatnot. And I always felt like it was always a team effort. But because I was the youngest, I was the spoiled one, and I realize that now. The boys, my brothers, would go out and work, no questions asked, where I'd be always dragging my feet. But yeah, the early years, I look back on them with great deal of love and happiness, and how mom and dad and my grandma dealt with all sorts of problems. Mom's favorite saying, the sun will come up again tomorrow. Dad, like if we get hailed out or there's a big problem, first thing he'd do is go over, have a shot of whiskey, and then go out and drive and look at the crops. Go over to friends of his, neighbors, see what kind of damage done there, and probably had a few drinks with them too. That was always part of the culture. Gloom and doom, have a shot. Happy Christmas, what are we having for drinks? Grandpa had a few. I never saw the man drunk. It was just used, I guess, in a way to calm his nerves. Oh, there's a problem. Well, let's have a shot and then go deal with it. But he wouldn't have 10. I figured, well, geez, if that works, I'll have the whole bottle. Even with on the farm, it's like I didn't deal with it right away like I should have. Still in my mind that I could solve problems by getting drunk and hiding from it. If it's happy or sad or a celebration, family celebration, there's booze around. Booze and music, always a lot of music. From there, I went into the RCMP, and that was not for me, as I found out through training. 19 years old in a red uniform, touring Canada. I think I had a girlfriend in every city. After that, they asked, okay, where do you want to be assigned? And I said, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, which was close, or Manitoba, which was close to home. Couldn't pick our home province. And then we got our assignments, and mine was Vancouver City, the last place in Canada I wanted to go to. That was part of why I purchased out. The other was my dad pressuring me, or at least making me feel obligated to come home and take over the family farm so that we wouldn't lose it. Because none of my brothers were interested at all. And they were smart enough to leave, I guess. Came home, share grew for many years because Grandpa wasn't ready to let go yet. He wasn't ready to sell to a young single guy. He says, no, no, you have to be married if you're going to grow tobacco. He had his rules. Well, then I found someone that I could tolerate. And we got married and still grew for up until he passed away and then bought the farm from Grandma. Unfortunately, I was in my second marriage by then when I did buy the farm, and I found out when I got divorced about communal rights, even though she had not been a part of farming or whatever, she was entitled to half of it, which disappointed me greatly because I felt I was guilty of losing half of my kids' inheritance, proper inheritance. Felt very bad about that. But by that time, I had sobered up and had realized that I was in control of my own life. I didn't have to try going around pleasing everyone. I didn't have to please Grandpa. He could have sold the farm back then and retired himself. But feeling obligated, that's that codependency in me. Helping other people to the point of damaging yourself. When did I start drinking? I always drank in a social way, never, well, sometimes to excess, but only in a controlled environment. It wasn't every day or anything by any means. When we were working in harvest, I don't think I ever drank. I never had time to even think about it. Second marriage, thought I had married the trophy wife. She was a model and the whole bit. Figured after 8 years of being single, this was the one. She was pretty good looking. All the guys were goggling her. But after 3 years or 4 years of marriage, everything I did was never good enough, it seemed. Gave and gave and gave until I was feeling okay. I'm going to hide from this. And I went out to my man cave and I started drinking heavily then. Made it. Oh, through that, there was enough money around. I used to buy the liquor, put it on credit cards so that she wouldn't find out how much I was drinking because it was an issue with her always. But with her, it was the solution was being accusing, saying out loud, "Oh, you're an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic." So I hid from her. Couldn't keep her happy, so I hid and self-medicated out in the man cave. That went on for a few years. 2, 3 years of being happy with her, but then the realization finally came along that I couldn't make her happy. And it wasn't up to me to make her happy, it was up to herself, which I've learned about myself later on. I had to look after myself first. So we went up, let's see, be about 8, 10 years into this, being out in the man cave and stuff, and I had a little party for the November 30th. It was a Grey Cup. The usual friends of mine came over. I downed about a 40 ouncer of vodka. Everybody left. I was outside, figured, okay, I had enough to drink here. She's going to be upset with me. I'm just going to stay in the man cave tonight. Went up to stoke up the stove, wood stove, and I passed out on it. Burned myself severely. Ended up on the ground. And it just happened that she came out, my ex-wife, and to check on me and found me lying on the ground. I couldn't move. And she helped me up on the couch, got a neighbor to come and help her because she couldn't lift me. Called an ambulance and they took me in. And I found out I had burns to 15% of my body. And they found out that I was diabetic. So I hadn't passed out. Well, probably because of the liquor, but also because I was in the diabetic coma. My sugar was well over 30, which is kind of dangerous, and the doctor came in and said, "You keep this up, you'll be dead in a month." So I came home, got home, figured, okay, this is it. I'm going to stay sober. I've had enough of this. Go out to the man cave. She'd come up to kiss me, but she'd sniff first. "You've been drinking. You've been drinking." And it just kept on. It was almost like she was going to be happy if she caught me. Well, after Christmas, I figured I've got control of this. 2 weeks after Christmas, I figured I'll just try some. Whenever I was drinking, whether it was a 40 or a 60 ouncer, I'd leave 2, 3 ounces for the morning because I needed that just to be normal. That turned into running into the LCBO the very next day and getting another bottle for the next year. I was blitzed out. I have very little recollection of that year. Your mother and Vanessa were coming over quite often. I thought, well, that's really nice of them to come over. They want like to visit with me. But they weren't visiting. They were checking up to make sure that I hadn't fallen or hurt myself or whatever. Vanessa and I, the one day we were just sitting there chit-chatting, sort of as a sly joke, she says, "Geez, Dad, you're drinking up my inheritance." And we kind of chuckled about that. But when she left, I got into thinking hard that, yeah, I'm just wasting my life here. I'm wasting all that hard work that I'd put in for 40 years of farming and living and seeing what had gone on with my mom and dad and their mom and dad. That was the day that I decided, okay, that's it. I'm quitting. But this time I'm going to get help. I called up, contacted Westover Health Center. They said they could get me in about 6 weeks. If I paid up front, they put me in sooner. Got in 3 months, and that changed my life from there. It opened my eyes to start with. They have a very good program there. It starts out 19 days. You leave your phone and then basically your life at the table when you came in. All my meds had to be surrendered and dished out by them twice a day. It's a 19-day program of that, no contact except for weekends. They'd have what they call family weekends. Your mom and Vanessa attended when they could because it was over a 3 hour drive for them. Lots came out, especially with your mom. Very tearful. Then, when I did graduate, once I got home, they have a 6 month program from there, one meeting a week for 6 months, and then you go back for another 10 days. The recovery support 10 days was eye opening. That was the kicker that even after 6 months of sobriety, that cemented it down. This one counselor, Deb, who I was always at odds with, but in a good way, we would discuss and the last day, last class, she pointed at me and said, "Robert, you are codependent." And I said, "I am not." What is that anyway? I am not codependent. Well, I got the book Codependent Anymore and read it, and I think out of 50 things you're supposed to read of signs, if more than two of them are a yes, then you're probably codependent. Well, I was about 47 out of 50 checks for, yep, you are. So I went back that one summer for the codependent 10-day program. And again, life altering. It made me more self-assertive. I was always afraid of doing anything without someone's support or affirmation. Always looking for affirmation. Is this good? Is this good? And that's part of the codependency instead of being self-supportive. I think when I came home from that, it was too much. I was a new person. She wanted somebody that she could control. Well, she was always looking for people to look at her. She was extremely narcissistic, and I tried looking after her some more. She had a little day there that she supposedly committed suicide. Turns out she just took a bunch of Gravol and whatnot and couldn't, and was dizzy. I called an ambulance and had her taken in and everything, and she says, "Oh, you're my hero," and whatnot. And well, and then she moved out too. Didn't realize, well, I was going to meetings. She would come and meet and we'd talk, and after she had moved out, she said she had to go find herself, being hopeful that, because I didn't want to get divorced again. And I figured, well, what else can I do? I've sobered up. I sobered up for myself, and I think that she resented that. I did it on my own. I didn't come and say, "Oh, I did it for you." I didn't. I did it for myself. Didn't hide from stuff anymore. I face things and deal with them the best I can. And that's all anyone can do. Again, look after yourself first because you're no good to anyone else if you can't. And that's what I was like when I was drinking heavily. I was no good to anyone, not even myself. I think I was heading down the road of suicide through drinking. But my daughters were actually supporting me. They were there for me. I thought, no, life is too much. It's too worth it. You got people that care about you. You got to look after things. AA say to look to a higher power for the strength to quit drinking. And my higher power was my mom and grandma, who were always positive. I keep thinking back, how would mom or Oma solve this problem? And I would remember they'd solve it head on, especially with, just listening to them talk. They're positive. The sun will always come up. What was the other one? The one about flowers. Patience brings flowers. And there's
Patience.
a lot in that. Patience will eventually produce results. Mom always used to say that one. Okay, that's a
Um,
cut.